Hello. Most of you who have stuck around to the end credits of my videos have probably noticed I'm a very big Arctic Monkeys fan. Recently, late last year, their new album The Car was released, and much like AM and Tranquility Bass, their sound has changed. Now I think this change from album to album has demonstrated the integrity and versatility of what the Arctic Monkeys are capable of. Going back to 2006, the Arctic Monkeys released their first album, Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. And this album reached #1 in the UK charts. Falling into line with the garage rock revival happening at the start of the early 2000s, the band sang about what they knew. Nights out in Sheffield. To this day, people still regard this album as the bread and butter of what the Arctic Monkeys sound like. The following year, the band released their second album, Favourite Worst Nightmare, which also hit the top of the UK charts in 2007. Expanding on the previous album, the heavier songs became heavier, and the softer moments got stripped back, allowing for everyone to catch their breath. Songs such as Only Ones Who Know, which is positioned right slap bang in the middle of the album.
In a foreign place, the saving grace was the feeling.
The pacing picks up again in the second half, leading to one of the best songs in the Arctic Monkeys catalogue, 505. Interestingly, this is the first time that frontman of the band, Alex Turner, used the keyboard when writing this song. This would be a factor of significance later on. When listening to 505, you can already hear the subtle changes starting to happen, especially from their debut album.
When you look at me like that, my darling, what did you expect?
After Favourite Worst Nightmare, the Arctic Monkeys took a short break. Frontman Alex Turner joined with Miles Kane, producer of the last Arctic Monkeys album, James Ford, and string arranger Owen Pallett formed another group known as the Last Shadow Puppets. Inspired by 60s sound, this new band can be described as very Bond-esque. This gave Turner a platform to experiment with where to take his music in the future. The band returned to their third album, Humbug, which is still one of the heaviest Arctic Monkeys albums ever released. Exploring with new guitar and keyboard sounds, Alex Turner even singing in a slower and smoother way to mask some of his northern accent. This was the first time the Arctic Monkeys had made a proper shift in sound, and in turn made this album a big success in America. Turner would concentrate more on the lyrics, making the songs more personal, but also making the lyrics more obscure, something he'd continue to do in later records. For a 2011 release, the Arctic Monkeys recorded their next album, Suck It and See, live in studio. Carrying on from where they left off from Humbug, Suck It and See is a lighter album, concentrating more on retro rock and a more poppier sort of sound, with heavier riffs in the first half. In the second half, the tone takes a lighter approach, veering away from the grittier sound of Humbug. Now, the only problem I have with this album, Suck It and See, is how middle of the road it is. You can hear the progression from Humbug through to AM, but Suck It and See doesn't quite have the psychedelic gritty sound that made Humbug so good. But it also doesn't have the great grooves that made AM so popular. It is just very middle ground. I mean, even after a year of touring this album, the Arctic Monkeys grew tired, which then led to...
I guess what I'm trying to say is I need the deep end, keep imagining meeting wished away.
Are You Mine as a single grew to be one of the biggest crowd pleasers the Arctic Monkeys had received in a while. This led the band to focus in on the track and use it as a blueprint for their next new album, AM. Do I Want to Know? One of the most famous Arctic Monkeys songs of all time. It's played all over the world, even now, 10 years on. Taking inspiration from hip-hop and R&B, mixed with the traditional rock and roll sound, this album transformed the Arctic Monkeys like never before. It was another major shift in terms of what they sound like. Such a major shift, however, that it divided the fandom. Some felt the Arctic Monkeys had shifted too much away from their traditional roots. The divided fandom from AM became even more divided 5 years on with the release of concept album Tranquility Bay's Hotel and Casino. Before receiving a piano for his 30th birthday, Alex Turner had no immediate ideas for the album. However, it didn't take long for the new concepts to come through. Inspired by films such as 8½ and films about filmmaking, Turner created a whole concept about a hotel and casino on the moon. Hence the title Tranquility Base, which is named after the site of the moon landing in 1969.
Absolutely forever to get to your eyes. And as we gaze skyward.
This record, in my eyes, feels more personal to Alex Turner. In every track, we're exploring and experiencing this world of the hotel and casino, and even Turner's anguish to modern society, as he feels so far removed from it all, he might as well have been watching planet Earth from outer space.
So when you gaze at planet Earth from outer space, does it wipe that stupid look off of your face?
Most of the lyrics are very cryptic across this album. The intention was to create a sense of intrigue and poeticism, which does fit nicely hand in hand with each other. This does, however, create a sense of being very overwhelmed on first listen. But on multiple listens, and once you capture the ideas / concepts of what each track is going for, it makes Tranquility Base one of the most thought-provoking and richest albums the Arctic Monkeys have ever released. Heading down a more piano, glam / art rock style, the latest album, The Car, seems to expand on what Tranquility Base was going for, but in a wider sense. The inclusion of string arrangements does make this album sound more expansive, although it is quite alienating on first listen. However, the rock and roll sound that we've come to expect from the Arctic Monkeys is there beneath the surface, which then erupts by the 5th track, Body Paint.
Still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face.
When recording this album, Alex Turner was living between London and Paris, and I think you can hear the influence of French pop in some of the tracks. Obviously, the influence of film is still prevalent, as this is probably the most cinematic sounding album we've received from the Arctic Monkeys so far. Nods to previous albums are made, however, especially with tracks like Sculpted or Anything Goes. I feel like the moody undertone does relate back to Humbug, despite sounding like nothing we've received from the Arctic Monkeys so far.
Infallible believes while I'm sucking it to you, performing in Spanish on Italian TV.
It's very hard to say what the Arctic Monkeys are going to do next. If they'll continue with their progression from Tranquility Base and The Car, or if they're going to move on to something entirely different. I think despite what era of the Arctic Monkeys you like, they will always still be that band from Sheffield that started with I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor. Even though they've explored different concepts, they will always come around to their traditional roots. If you enjoyed what you saw here today, feel free to subscribe for similar content. If there was a particular video or section of the video you liked, let me know by liking or commenting on the video. Your likes and comments could influence the next topic I talk about. Thanks for watching.